in?
Sure. Coming in. So live stream is running. If someone wants to check that on the page, I could do it. Turn on the phone. What I didn't check is whether the level of the mic is still properly set. Didn't use it over the summer. Worst case is it'll be a bit too loud or a bit too low. I wait till the last of you have settled in. So it looks like we can just make it in this room, right? But it's not a lot of space left. Can you hear me fine also in the back? I could use the mic. I usually prefer not to because you have to bow down a lot, and I have another mic recording it. So let's try without, if that's all right. Just notice it doesn't say COMP526 anywhere apart from this really tiny bit. Maybe needs an update for the logo. Good. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to COMP526, which is called Efficient Algorithms. It's an MSc module that is now offered in the first semester instead of the second, and it's now offered for a lot of courses instead of just a few of them. So there will be a few things in the flux, especially in terms of the administrative side. If it ever says applied algorithmics somewhere, that's the same thing. We renamed it to better reflect the content. And I did my best to rename it in all places I know of and which are under my control, which is not the entirety of this planet, unfortunately. I might have forgotten a few places. Yeah. I split this up into units, so it starts with unit 0, which looks a bit silly, but it'll make more sense later on. I'm Sebastian, your instructor. I'm an assistant professor in our Department of Computer Science. You can find me in my office if you have questions. However, we'll get to more efficient ways to reaching me. Email is certainly one of them. And we'll have tutorials as well in smaller groups. And those will be led by Ben Smith, my PhD student. More on that soon as well. They will only start next week, so no need to worry about this for the moment. The first important bit is the module website. I hope and guess many of you will have found the links to it via Canvas and all the other means. But that's the main source of information around the module. Sure. So whatever concerns the module and is fine to be on a public website will be there. A few bits and bobs might go into Canvas if there's legal requirements. Basically anything that has to do with your personal data has to be in Canvas. That in particular means any kind of assessments, marks, comments, feedback for that. Otherwise, I keep things on the publicly accessible website. It's just more convenient. I will live stream and record the lectures as you have seen. However, there's some interactive bits. So if you can't make it to class, at least try to join on the live stream because you can still join on Slido on those questions. So you don't miss out on those. There's the recording. So the live stream's on YouTube. The recording will also be on YouTube. So you can still access the material. But experience shows that results are good marks are correlated with good interaction in the lectures, say. I'm not a big fan of attendance in itself because, you know, you can be physically present and sleeping. However, the university introduced a new attendance system, and I'm not 100% sure if we're obliged to use it at MSc level or not. Sure. Do you have any information on this? Are you expecting a code from me? You do? Okay. I can get one from the timetable. Maybe let's do that first. So I don't want to get you into trouble by not having the code. As I said, I think it's more important for me that you engage, and there's various ways to do that. But if this is needed to make admin happy, I'm not in the way. So that's the code I get from the timetables, and you know what to do with it. It looks like it. I was really hoping we escaped this at MSc level, because we didn't take attendance in lectures in the past, not at MSc level. It's fine for the kids in first year, right? They need to learn what uni is like, and that you can go drinking, but you have to get up in the morning either way. That's all good and fine. But I guess you guys would have figured that out as well. Okay, back to more module-related things again. I'll keep the code there. There's a few important pointers I want to list here, and the first one is Campuswire. I already announced this. This is, in a nutshell, it's a question and answer platform. It has a few advantages over a few other systems, so bear with me that there's other websites on top of what the uni systems already provide. But if you've used the forums on Canvas, you would probably agree with me that this is better. It's just a few extra features. You can ask anonymous questions, which I think is sometimes very convenient and useful. And it's overall a bit of a nicer interface. You can write Markdown and you can write LaTeX formulas. If that means nothing to you, don't worry. But if it does, then maybe you appreciate the nerdiness of that platform compared to Canvas. You will have to sign up for that, and you need a PIN, a little code. So the link is on the public website. The code is only on the slides, which I put on the public website. But no one so far joined who disturbed our inner circle. So please sign up there. I want to use this not just for your questions, but also for announcements. It's just a little quicker to get them out there. Only the hard examination related things will also be on Canvas. There's one more thing I wanted to say about Campuswire. I can maybe briefly show. I have slides on this later. I'm rushing ahead of myself. The second thing is Slido. As you've used a few moments ago, is for feedback during lectures. It's just to make it a little more interactive, wake you up once in a while. I'll also use it for some questions that test your understanding. So it's a nice way in lecture to check, am I just nodding along and actually not following, or did I get what's behind this? It's usually fairly superficial, but still it's very effective in testing if you got the basics. So I'll try to use that as much as possible. You'll probably care about the assessments. There'll be assessments. We have a final exam, which is 60% of the final mark, and we'll do some continuous assessments to complement that. So 60% is about the lowest you can go without getting into all sorts of hassles. There are modules without exams at all, but I'm also not a big fan of that. But I like to have a larger portion of the mark come from continuous assessments. It's just not putting so much weight on a single day, you know. We'll get to that. Now let's try to exercise the Slido system for one more thing. And this is a little bit a teaser into the next slide for how these lectures are run. And hopefully that's something that you enjoy. That was that one. Now there's no automatic change of the question on Slido for my slides. So you always have to wait for me to kick that off. That's still big enough to read from last row. I scaled down this font a bit. Okay. So the first person liked asynchronous online and was the fastest to vote. Is there a correlation between tech savviness and preference? If you're done voting, then you can enjoy seeing the bars shift around. If you haven't, try not to let yourself influence from it. Yeah, sure. I asked the same question the last 2 years in obviously different circumstances. I was about to take the question out because it's not as relevant anymore, I thought, but then maybe it is because people are still using their lecture recordings, people are still more experimenting with what lectures could be like. There seems to be some preference for face-to-face lectures though, but ideally in small groups, which I can fully understand. And then synchronous online comes before face-to-face, just slightly. Okay, a bit more. Okay, I didn't count how many we have in the last question. We had 78 votes on the first question, 57. Is someone still actively moving things around or mostly done? I'll leave it open. I mean, this is basically just for my curiosity. I totally agree with the first one. I think this is the best. It's just super expensive and doesn't scale, so it's hardly any university affords to do that for the majority of lectures. We'll have the tutorials which go a little bit in that direction. Synchronous online, people hate it when they had to do it. Now it seems more popular. That's interesting. Now you can do that for this one at least. You can stay home if you want and join online. And then you can put this to a test. And well, limited interaction was the other alternative. I think I only put face-to-face lectures like this are by default limited interaction, and there's nothing we can do about it. Slido is still very limited. All right, thanks for playing along with this. Good. So what I try to do, apart from the obvious things like explaining things intuitively, well, it's never hurting, right? And having structure. I hope you will recognize this by yourself and agree. The other thing is, I definitely think synchronous lectures work better than videos. I tested this for myself. Now that's sample size 1, but it's very hard to stay engaged with recordings. So even though we all have fancy video recordings, or many of us have fancy video recordings from the pandemic, I don't think that's a replacement for lectures. And I mean, the University of Liverpool at large also doesn't think that, but yeah, one could have come up with that idea. However, the live lectures have the problem that just by the size and also by the nature of putting your hand up in this space, you only get a minority of students to engage because they choose to, or because it's just not enough time. Whereas some sort of digital help can mitigate that a bit. I can at least get you to click. That usually works with almost 100% response rate. Whereas if I were to ask, do you like Slido? Do you not like it? Are you indecisive? You're neither, right? Because it's annoying to put your hand up to these questions. I hated it. Whereas online is less intrusive. I don't know why. It's psychology, I guess. So we'll have these little Slido things, but enough talk about that. What are we actually going to do? We'll have lectures like this, 2 slots a week. That's where we'll discuss material, the actual algorithms. When I say algorithms, I mean the real algorithms, mathematical algorithms, not the AI fuzzy algorithm thing that decides what you see on your Twitter feed or whatever. There's other lectures for that. They are very interesting, but they're not the type of algorithms we'll look at here. Slido questions to go alongside with that. Said that many times. The tutorials will cover certain aspects of the lecture and go a little bit into detail there. And they will do that with questions. So you'll get exercise sheets with questions that you are supposed to prepare, and the tutorials will discuss how to solve those. It's most effective if you solve those and write something up before you go. We don't have the capacity to check them every week, but it's still good practice for you to do that and check yourself. So it's not forced, but they tend to be much more effective if you try to solve the questions before coming. Throughout the term, we'll have Campuswire open. I'll say some more about that later. We have a few class tests. So the 40% mark that is not exams is split across different things. One chunk will be programming puzzles. That's half of the 40%. We'll start with that in 2-3 weeks, so not to worry about that now. It's basically a combination of solving algorithmic puzzles and a tiny bit of programming alongside. Because the audience is very heterogeneous, I don't rely on much coding skills, especially now that it's in the first semester. We have some people from conversion masters that don't have a computer science undergrad. I don't know if you realize that, or if you chat to people here, you will see it's very mixed. So the focus is on solving puzzles, a little bit of programming to frame it and to make the puzzle solving more effective. And then the other bit is class tests. Now, is a bit of a misnomer just because we don't have a category for that. It's officially a class test, but really it's a Canvas quiz. And what we'll do is it'll be little problems where you execute some algorithm on an example. And you'll have a practice question where you can try as often as you want. And then the real one will be the same type of question, but obviously a different example. I'll try to get started with those relatively soon, but also not before we covered some material. But I wanted to mention that already. That brings me to the actual content. Just a very rough, what are the goals of the module? These are effectively the learning outcomes, but rephrased a little bit. What we'll do is cover fundamental algorithms and data structures, and a few more advanced ones. And this builds a toolbox for you to use in solving other problems. And like with every toolbox, you're not usually just using one thing and that fits. You have to combine things. But it's also tough if you don't have names for the tools. So a lot is about communicating in terms of algorithms and data structures with your future peers, colleagues. They expect you to understand if they say, I don't know, an augmented binary search tree should do, you should be able to nod along and say, yeah, I know what that is, and I think I know why it solves the problem. Things like that. And they come with a certain level of abstraction. So you go away from very concrete problems and go to a class of problems that are solved by the same thing. That allows you to get more effective and makes you a better coder. I'm very convinced about that. And we'll talk a little bit about the underlying mathematical techniques and proofs and so on. The module is divided into roughly 10 units for the roughly 10 weeks of teaching. That'll only be true on average. So some units are a bit longer, some a bit shorter. I don't want to say too much about this. You'll see what that is at the time. we'll basically talk about some basics, what's behind the abstractions we're working with. We'll look a little bit at some basics that some of you will have, and for others, I will quickly run you through. And then we'll dive a bit deeper into methods for string and text. So much for that at this point. I said something about the assessment already, the 60% for the exam, and the other 40% are broken down like this. 2 programming puzzles with 10% and then 15% of the class test. Now you may notice there's 5% left, and that's for just clicking along on Slido. So that's why it's really important for you to sign up on Slido with a university email account, just so that I can link you to the appropriate account on Canvas for the participation mark. If you've signed up with some other email, you can change it. You just have to, on Slido, I think, I don't see it in my view. So there's this little circle with your account, and you can change the email there or sign up afresh. If you do it at the beginning of the term, not much lost. I already talked about the class tests, I think, so not much more to say there. Is the questions that are popping up in the class tests often are old exam questions. I just recycled some of these old online exams. So these are real questions that make sense for you to know. I hope that motivates you a bit. But it also is a way to offload weight from the exam to the term. In the past, Campuswire was always super busy the 2 weeks before the exam and slightly less busy the 10 weeks before that. I always had this bonus point system. I'm trying it again. I think this is the last time, though. If it doesn't change much, then I'll probably drop it. So it's up to you guys. I want to incentivize you to write good questions and write answers on Campuswire. The point really is, if you ask good questions and also answer the questions of other people, you will take more out of more from this class. And so we'll earn collective bonus points. All the questions count together. It's not an individual thing. And there's some mark for good questions and for good answers. All right. For the participation mark, though, you just have to participate in the questions. It doesn't matter if you're correct. Some questions have a right and wrong answer, but that's only for your feedback. The participation is to participate, not to get it right the first time. I hope that's all on assessments for now. I've spoken at length about Slido already. In the past, people called these clicker systems because they started off with hardware devices that, especially in North American universities, made students buy. And so they spent 50 to 100 pounds on a device that had 4 buttons, and you could do what Slido can do. It's a business model, right? But people moved away from that. But still, the term clicker questions somehow stuck. Maybe the official one would be student response system. That's a bit lame, though. So clickers. Right. There's no clicking on Slido, but I still like it, and I talked about it at length. I think we don't have to do this. I can put up the question, and you can tell me. But I don't want to spend more time on this. I think you've seen how it works, and it seems to work well. The next thing to briefly discuss is Campuswire. There will be more about this on Campuswire itself. Ben will post some induction posts there to walk you through some of the features. I just want to mention the main things. So let me show you briefly what it looks like. That's what it looks like if I log in. It's fairly empty at the moment. There's two things. There's rooms. I'll zoom in a bit. So rooms are just chat rooms. I set up just 2 because that's usually enough. So we have some off topic where you can, I don't know, I found this fun webcomic and thought you guys enjoy. Why not? And there's the other one for things about the lecture. Like in the past, we had sometimes people post from the live stream, hey, the audio is not working, or things like that. Sometimes it's convenient to quickly reach into the audience, both ways. So these are just chat rooms. They work like in many other platforms, fairly basic. And the other big thing is the class feed. That's where you can ask questions and where I can post announcements. And so, well, if you click here, you write your question, and then off you go. And other people can answer it. And you can upvote or downvote answers, or mostly upvote, I hope. And this is, again, the main thing is you are answering the questions of your peers, because that's the way you get the most out of this. I don't know if someone has experience with tutoring. Usually you learn more when you tutor than your tutee, because by teaching something another time, you really see whether you understood it and you make new connections. The same happens with answering questions in a small scale. So I can only encourage you. There's the bonus points. There's all this educational research showing the effectiveness. The rest's up to you. Some example questions, like it could be something very concrete and technical, or it could be something organizational that you think is worth knowing for everyone. Now, I guess this is not so likely to happen in the first semester. Importantly, answer even if you're not entirely sure that you know it. You can frame it, I think, blah, 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 or here's the first bit of the answer. And people can, complement your answer with the second bit. You can ask questions anonymously if you don't feel like speaking up, or you feel like this might be a dumb question, but I'll give it a go. There's no dumb questions, but there's shy students. I don't want to stop you from writing questions. Orthogonal to that is private questions. These are questions that only go to me and Ben. I would normally say try not to use them unless it's something that kind of spoils an assessment. If you ask for clarification, is this meant to be the answer to question blah, blah, blah? In case you're right, that would have told the answer to everyone. That's what the private questions can be useful for. Yeah, I'll spelled out some goals for Campuswire. I don't know. I'm kind of forcing you to use it and give it a go at least. So I think it's fairer because everyone gets the same answer, as opposed to some students coming to me or office hours where I give the same answer to everyone who's there, but not everyone's there. Is the same effect I mentioned before. You learn something if you explain it, and anonymous can help get more people active, and that's always good. So what does that mean? I will, by default, if you write me an email with some question where I think this is probably relevant to 5 other people, I will redirect you to Campuswire and ask you to just post there for exactly the reason that everyone gets the answer. I'll usually wait a bit if it's a question like this technical one is whatever, n cubed, whatever it was, the one with the formulas and the big O terms. I would not immediately answer this, even if I knew, but I want to give you a chance to answer first, other students. But if some student answers and I happen to see it right away, I click endorse or mark it as, I think it's just good question, he gets a star or something, you can see that it's endorsed by one of the instructors. So you can rely on this question, even if it comes from a student. Who knows whether that guy is correct, right? But if it has the official stamp, you can rely on the answer. And that's the bonus points I mentioned. So if you ask a question that I think is reasonable, so I put this in as a safety clause for myself, right? So you don't flood the system just with empty questions. It has to be a genuine question. Then everyone gets 10 points, 20 for a good answer, and an additional 10 if the answer didn't need any kind of additional explanation from our side. You saved us time then, so you should be rewarded. And yeah, so the way we decided to do this is you'll just get a little bonus on the aggregated class test mark. A little bit of an incentive. Okay. COMP526 is part of a scientific course. Now, what does that mean? It's not only about teaching you how to excel in your industry role that probably the majority of you will go into at some point. But even though you're not all going to be scientists, we want to teach you some bits of the philosophy of science. Not so much because we want to torture you, but because we think it's useful. But it's often a bit long-term useful, as opposed to learning exactly the JavaScript framework that's hot this week. You learn the basics so that you can jump on whatever is relevant next week when you start your job. I'm only slightly exaggerating. For JavaScript frameworks, I think 2 years is already basically end of life. And who knows? But there's some things that don't age so quickly. We'll try to focus on that. A little bit less staring at the screen and having no clue, and a bit more like this. So maybe let me just read this one. The world is so complicated. The more I learn, the less clear anything gets. There are too many ideas and arguments to pick and choose from. How can I trust myself to know the truth about anything? And if everything I know is so shaky, what on earth am I doing teaching? I guess you just do your best. No one can impart perfect universal truths to their students. Except math teachers. Thank you. Yeah, there's some truth in that. So we'll focus on the universal truths of practical algorithms. I smuggled practical in here to make it at least a little more attractive for people focusing on the more practical side of things. Universal truths here has a specific meaning. It means we'll go away from the things that age very quickly, like concrete hardware or concrete programming languages, and one level of abstraction up to things that have basically not changed so much over the lifespan of computer science, which is just a couple of decades. And we'll also look at making predictions in these models. This will become more clear in the next unit, I think. What this means, though, is that we need a little bit of mathematical background for doing that. Because if you go away from concrete things, it becomes a little more abstract. And abstract is what math is good about. Math is all about abstracting things the right way. And I'm making bulletproof statements about it. Before we start with that, though, I want to do a little test with you. And the test is not really a test, but a prerequisite survey or prior knowledge survey. So if you go to the link on the slide, it should give you some Google form. This is a lengthy survey which will keep you busy till the end of our session. So I'll give you the time that you need. The main reason why I want to do this with you is to help me see what you know, so that I can where possible, adapt teaching a bit to the thing. Well, spend more time when things are new to you, speed up on the things that are already known. I want to stress it's not graded, it's just for information. It's actually anonymous, so I can't even tell. The fancy educational term is it's a formative assessment. It is an assessment because we test something, but it's only for your information and for your learning. It's not for marking. The questions are very broad. They mostly cover things that can be useful for this module, but not all are necessary to succeed in this module. And some of the things we'll touch on anyways, and some others are just tangentially related. But I think they're good proxies for gauging your background. All right, so give that a go. Let me know if you run into any technical problems with the forum, but sometimes the images don't load properly. Yeah, if you're not sure, so some of the questions are tough, and they are meant to be like you may need a little piece of paper to write notes. Please don't guess. If you really don't see the point or don't get it or give up, then click the don't know. Otherwise, you're sending random signals, right? Either you guess right, but you only guessed it, or you put some weird answer and you get me puzzled later today. Why did they think this? Right? Yep. Forgot to mention a good feature of Slido. You can ask questions. And here's one question. You figured it out yourself. And the answer is yes. There will be some sample solutions for the tutorial problems. Are you getting on? Roughly, what page are you on? It should tell you at the bottom how far you roughly are.
Page 10.
Page 10? Other indicators? Okay, almost done.
Page 8.
So I would normally try to stop around now, so 10 minutes before the end of the slot. But you can stay and finish it unless we're kicked out. I would be very, very thankful if you continue it either here or at home or where we go. It's always been helpful to know where people stand. Woohoo! Okay, results are trickling in. I'll stop the live stream. See you on Wednesday.